What if I told you that reading many books as a child was a sign of trauma in childhood and was serving to help you dissociate? Or what if I told you that when you started to read a book as a kid and you didn't finish it, that may be a sign of ADHD? And what if I told you that not reading much as a child was a sign of an intellectual disability? What would you start thinking about your own childhood, your own reading habits, and would you start to worry? What you just went through is one of the biggest problems on social media, and we're going to show you how to avoid it. How TikTok docs are making you sick today on Off the Couch. And welcome to Off the Couch with Dr. Greg, where psychology meets everyday life. I'm Dr. Greg, case-on psychologist, here with Brian.
Happy Monday, you guys.
And also, we're here on the board is Noah.
Hello, hello.
Noah, we're going to be talking to you a little bit today, but we're going to be talking about this. God only knows where my notes are taking me. We're going to be talking about how TikTok docs are making you sick. And when I say TikTok docs, I don't mean actual medical professionals. I mean all those health and media influencers, all those health influencers that are online that are telling you how to live your life, how to cure your cancer, how to have better bowel movements, how to read, how to get over your ADHD. So we're going to be dealing with those because they've been doing a lot of harm. But first, I've been kind of avoiding the national news because a lot of things are affecting mental health right now. Not only mental health funding, which I'm especially sick by, taking away science funding. I mean, this is all making national news. You know, the Veterans Association just had a whole bunch of mental health jobs, including suicide prevention, slashed. We have all kinds of big issues going on in our world regarding mental health, but thank goodness that is making the media. So if you look at your own media sources, you're probably aware of all of these things. But I wanted to bring you a piece of news I didn't think many people would catch. This is something completely off the beaten path that I just happened to catch in the Kentucky Lantern. The Kentucky Lantern is a newspaper in Kentucky, and they published on March 27th about a piece of legislation that was overrode. There was a veto that was overridden, and the bill itself is going to go into law. And let me talk about what that is. House Bill 495, this is regarding mental health and medical issues, is a bill aimed at overturning Governor Andy Beshear's executive order restricting conversion therapy and prohibiting Medicaid from covering transgender affirming medical care in the state of Kentucky. So in 2024, Governor Andy Beshear, he's actually a Democratic governor. Did you know that Kentucky had a Democratic governor? Although it's a very, very red state, they do have a Democratic governor. You didn't.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
Nice, though.
No, and so he crosses the line. He is a really good guy. But Andy Beshear signed an executive order banning conversion therapy for minors. Do you know what conversion therapy is, Brian?
No, and that's why I wanted you to kind of explain to everybody what that is exactly.
So conversion therapy is the pseudoscientific practice of attempting to change an individual's sexual orientation, romantic orientation, gender identity, gender expression, and they're all meant to align with heterosexual and traditional gender norms.
And around when did that start to kind of fizzle out? Because I know in different generations that was a common thing that was happening. I mean, that's not something that was around when I was growing up like that, or that I was aware of.
It was very much around when you were growing up. It was very much around. Luckily, you didn't intersect with it.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean.
But it's been with us for a long time. It's primarily done by religious organizations. It's not done by academic institutions, and it is. I mean, we're going to talk about like all the major medical and psychological associations have prohibited it and say that it's actually damaging. And we'll talk about that just a little bit. But, in 2024, Governor Andy Beshear signed an executive order banning conversion therapy for minors because they were still doing it in the state of Kentucky. Here in California, it is not done. It is actually banned here. He later vetoed HB 495. So they had another issue come up, and they passed the Congress and the House and the Senate of Kentucky passed a House Bill 495 labeling conversion therapy as dangerous and a discriminatory practice. He vetoed that. He vetoed it. He labeled it dangerous and a discriminatory practice. I shouldn't read my own notes, huh? It's really getting me in trouble. Just to kind of go through this. So he signed an executive order, which is sort of like, hey, this is now the law. This is the governor doing this. But as we know, there's a separation of powers, and there's separation of powers in states as well. To the schoolhouse rock, the House and the Senate have to get together to pass a bill to make a law. But the governor can do one kind of a weak law called an executive order. And then the House and the Senate can write a bill to kind of push that law away. But what can happen is the governor then has the right to veto that. So the governor can say, no, I don't want that. And he can veto it saying and kick it away. But a House and Senate can get together and override a veto. And in Kentucky, you only need a simple majority to override the veto. So they basically just met again and re-voted and overrode his veto, and now it is law. In fact, this was an emergency law, and it was passed along party lines. That means it was all Republicans who passed it, 78-20 in the House, and the Senate 31-6 to override it. Actually, one Democratic senator crossed over. So, well, I know. So, it's just basically this law that now permits conversion therapy to happen in the state of Kentucky. And because the way this law was written, it was written as an emergency. So I don't know what's emergency about this, but nonetheless, it was written as an emergency, and now the law is immediately in place. So you can now do conversion therapy in the state of Kentucky. It also bans the use of Medicaid funds from covering transgender affirming medical care. So gender affirming medical care. It is banning the use of public funds.
Well, that's not surprising if they're starting that conversion therapy.
Not surprising. It is kind of weird that they wrap both into one bill. It's sort of like a hate bill, but nonetheless, it's something extremely concerning. So just to go through the things, I know we're talking about politics. I don't want to as much, but this is around mental health of human beings who are out there. The Fairness Campaign. This Fairness Campaign is a Kentucky-based organization dedicated to advancing LGBTQ civil rights in Kentucky. Their executive director, Chris Hartman, described it as a sad day, stating that HB 495 opens the door to conversion torture. Now, why would he say torture? You're not familiar with conversion therapy then?
No, because I'm glad I'm not religious, because if that was a religious thing, then...
It is very definitely a religious thing. I don't know that it takes place outside of religious counseling. And
scary.
People who are like religious. And I know that the House Speaker, Mike Johnson, his wife heads up a conversion therapy thing.
It's crazy that they're doing this and not investigating all the child molestation that happens within the religious practices.
Oh, why would they do that when it would just aim the quiver back at their face? I mean, instead it's easier to blame somebody else. And
the victims.
You opens the door to conversion torture and denies Medicaid coverage for gender affirming health care. The American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry has discredited conversion therapy, highlighting its potential to cause significant harm, including increased rates of suicide, anxiety, and depression among minors. That isn't just conjecture. That's bared out by many, many studies. In fact, we know that people who go through conversion therapy are twice as more likely to attempt suicide than your average bear. So if they had not gone through conversion therapy, so they become twice as likely to attempt suicide after conversion therapy. Why is that? It's very simple. You're basically telling somebody over and over that who they are is wrong and who they are needs to change, and that you are the way you're determining is the way this is. The most interesting thing, you guys should look into conversion therapy. It's kind of a lot of fun. Most conversion therapy camps and whatnot are actually led by people who are themselves trying to keep their own sexuality at bay.
So you mean closeted people?
Closeted people. Or people who have somebody in their life like a husband or, somebody close in their life who they believe is gay, who they are also trying to fix from afar.
Well, I mean,
it's
that's
kind
a
of
lot
interesting.
Of church. I think that's a lot of religion where they're like, if you're not doing this exactly by the book, then you're wrong and bad.
Yeah, and to me that is not the teachings of Jesus. Jesus was really kind of a cool, accepting dude. And
I don't think God would have messed up on creating his people and then have said,
I don't know. But
no.
This has gone afar. We are not talking psychology. We're talking religion, and let's not do that. But I do think it's interesting because they've waded into the psychology pool with this particular thing, and they want to have their therapy. They want to be able to do this. And and there are licensed practitioners who do follow more religious teachings as opposed to academic or scientific teachings. That does exist. All you need to do is pass the licensing exam and then you can do this.
And do you know anybody that's gone through this conversion therapy
I do.
Patients?
I do. That's a good question. I actually do. And it has caused significant trauma. I mean, the only thing that conversion therapy is good for is my pocketbook for helping people after the extreme trauma that they've experienced. I mean, I'm sorry. Maybe their pocketbook because their parents or maybe even them paid for it. I once knew a guy who went through a conversion therapy. He was a cop here in L.A., and he went through several treatments where they gave him all kinds of shock treatments and other things to try to change his sexuality. It never changed it. But man, that guy was screwed up.
I'm sure from getting shocked, your brain mentally just, yeah.
Well, there is a safer way to do it now, but back then it wasn't perhaps the safest treatment. There are people who've gone through lobotomies. There are people who've done all kinds of things through castrations, chemical castrations, all to try to get rid of the sexuality. And why is that? Because we're trying to make sexuality that is not heterosexual pathological. And that's the problem. So, this is actually a big issue. But so it brought up something I remember that we used to do back I remember in grad school, I discovered this. This is something called the Heterosexual Questionnaire. This is written by a psychologist, Martin Rochlin. He wrote this in 1972. And for this, the question is only for self-avowed heterosexuals. So I'm sorry, Brian, I cannot give this to you. If you are not openly heterosexual, you cannot take this test. And you want to be as candid as possible. And we're gonna do our best. Now, Noah, hey Noah, I know that you have described yourself as a heterosexual person.
That's correct.
And I want to ask you some of the questions on this test. And you can put them up on the board too.
Okay.
I want to start with number 1. What do you think caused your heterosexuality? That's okay. We'll try number 2. How about when and how did you first decide you were heterosexual? Okay. Is it possible your heterosexuality is just a phase and you may grow out of it?
Definitely not.
Yeah, well, okay. If you've never slept with a person of the same sex, how can you be sure?
Next question.
And to whom have you disclosed your heterosexual tendencies?
To whom have I disclosed my heterosexual tendencies? Did you say you went to did you go to your parents and tell them, Mom, Dad, I'm a heterosexual? No, I never had to do that.
Oh, I'm sorry, you haven't? Why do you insist on flaunting your heterosexuality? Here, I knew all about it before we even walked in the room.
I guess it's just the way I present myself. just the way
I don't know. I'm who knows? I mean, you could just be who you are and keep it quiet. You didn't have to ever say anything.
Okay. Sorry.
A disproportionate majority of child molesters are actually heterosexual men. Brian, you were talking about this. Do you consider it safe to expose children to heterosexual male teachers, pediatricians, priests, and scoutmasters?
I guess some of them. I think that's more of a case-by-case basis sort of thing.
Well, I wonder who's going to do that screening process.
Not me.
And why do heterosexuals place so much of an emphasis on sex?
I don't know, because it's great.
Oh. And why are heterosexuals so promiscuous? I mean, my God, there are so many children running around.
Promiscuously heterosexual?
Promiscuous, like having a lot of sex.
Oh. Slutty.
We're not talking about me.
the clubs, etc. I'm sorry if you're not getting to participate in the promiscuity out there. And there seem to be very few happy heterosexuals. Actually, techniques have been developed that might enable you to change if you really want to, Noah. After all, you've never deliberately chose to be a heterosexual, did you? You never did.
No.
Have you even considered aversion therapy or Heterosexuals Anonymous or some kind of conversion therapy to help you to live a more normal life?
No, I haven't. Okay, so these are obviously satirical questions, kind of trying to poke fun at the inverse of this.
Yes, because for gay people, these are questions that are actually fairly commonly asked.
These are pretty ridiculous questions.
Well, try being on the other side of that a lot. And you people do ask these of gay people all the time, like when did you first know, and da da da. I mean, I do understand that people can suppress and evade their homosexuality or their sexuality. Like for me, I can say when I was a kid, I knew that I was different, and before I had a good label for it.
I just called it special.
You thought you were special.
Yeah.
Isn't that nice?
I was growing up with Barbie, so.
Oh, was Barbie special at the time?
Well, the Barbies, yeah. I played with Barbies and, not every boy played with Barbies. So.
Gender atypical play is an indication. Yeah. Gender atypical play is an indication, but it actually is not foolproof. It's not foolproof at all. And if you looked at all the toys I had just all boy toys. I did want that Easy Bake Oven though. But yeah. So we used to have mud fights, and we were running around in the field and playing in construction sites. When I was a kid, I would bring home snails and lizards, and I would hide them in a jar and keep them in my drawer. My mother, poor thing, she's probably listening and horrified, but this did actually take place. And I remember putting all these snails in a jar without poking holes in it and putting cotton balls in there, thinking it would soften it for them. So I basically tortured a whole bunch of snails into dying. And then I would bring things home from the beach. I would bring hermit crabs home from the beach. Oh, I know. But when you're a kid, you do this stuff. Well, I did.
Just you.
I was obsessed. And we were always playing with spider webs and things like that, and spiders. So I look back at my life and I'm like, oh, what a weirdo I was, But that's all being like a little boy. I think it's not so unusual. But yeah, so, I think we don't look at sexuality the same. If we saw sexuality the same, then we would not try to change sexuality. Right now, everything is becoming political, and I hate that mental health is becoming political. What we should always do, and I say should with true meaning, like it would be wrong if we don't. What we should always do is to bring out the best in science, try to achieve a consensus, and do the best to help people live the best life they can, and not give treatments that are known to harm other people just because of our own prejudice. And here the prejudice is coming from religious teachings.
Maybe in like another administration,
I don't think it's just the administration. I really don't.
Well, they're like fueling what,
There is, we could talk about attitude, and the attitude comes from the top, and there is an attitude now of it's okay to be cruel or sadistic, and that attitude is coming out in different ways. You may be right, but I would say conversion therapy has been a problem in this country for many, many years.
Which is why it was, being handled and taken out of practice, right?
Why it's been taken out of practice? Yeah. Can I tell you a story that was really interesting to me? Because there's, God, I don't want to say his name, but there's a very prominent person, because I don't want to say his name because there is somebody else involved. Prominent person who wrote several books and was like the expert in the country. This is back like in the 90s on conversion therapy. And this person was, to me, he was a psychologist and really doing great harm to the mental health of so many people out there, not only by his personal work, but what he was teaching others. So this guy was doing this stuff, and I'm teaching in a class. I'm teaching in a PhD class for people getting their PhD in therapy, in psychology, not in therapy. And who walks in my class but the son of this person? And he even looked like him, except a young version. And my heart started beating fast. I started getting cold, and I had to calm myself down and go, this guy, this son, didn't do anything. He grew up in this family with this person. I'm not going to talk about this or address this or say anything to this person. I'm just going to teach what I'm going to teach. And if he's wrong about something, I'll point that out. But otherwise, I'm going to keep things very straightforward. Well, lo and behold, this particular person was actually a great student in my class. He did the work. He was very thoughtful and analytical. And he did not hold all the same views of his father, but that didn't come out until much, much later. But what he was very thoughtful. And I was glad I never said a thing. So
nice. Well, I'm glad he didn't pick up his dad's way of thinking.
Well, I don't know if he ultimately did, but he didn't demonstrate that in the class. He demonstrated much more flexibility of thinking. So that brings us to the main story. We got all involved in that. I just wanted to touch on something else, which is when we get devolved in things, because I saw a story in Rolling Stone where Grimes shares her ADHD and autism diagnoses. She shares them with Rolling Stone magazine. Now, Rolling Stone magazine is a great magazine. They don't just do music, they do all kinds of stuff. It's really great publication. So Grimes, this is a singer. You may know her name because she's married to Elon Musk. And she has that son. If you've seen Elon Musk walking around with a 4-year-old child as a human shield, that's actually her son. I believe that's her youngest son. Or no, maybe the oldest son. She has 3 kids with him. I don't know. But that kid is kind of funny, too. Because that kid is, did you see I
don't know about funny. I would maybe not well parented. I remember going with my dad to business meetings and think I was being tortured. I can't imagine what that kid is having to deal with all day long. I don't think he cares.
He doesn't seem to care.
Yeah.
Anyway, Grimes revealed her diagnoses of ADHD and autism, and she reflects how early recognition might have changed her life. And she was saying, if I'd known that I had these things as a kid, I might have been more acceptance and sought more ways to cope with these difficulties. Kind of boring stuff. I mean, the normal stuff you do because you're like, oh, I wish I had known that earlier. That's great. But she expressed something I wanted to talk about, which is she talked about getting mental health advice from social media. And she called social media extreme info hazards, which I loved. She talked about her own experience with dyslexia, which she links to undiagnosed, her poor spelling, which she linked to undiagnosed dyslexia. And she feels like if she could have received an actual diagnosis, it could have helped her. But the social media actually ended up kind of confusing her. She talked about a meme that she saw on TikTok about how excessive reading in childhood is a sign of dissociation, and I can't stop thinking about it. And this was on a TikTok board. And she was saying, wait a minute, excessive reading when I was a kid was actually helping me, was helping her focus and helping her to be able to deal with things. So she, but this was on TikTok, but I've never heard that excessive reading was a sign of dissociation, but it could be. And that's the problem with this. All three things I said at the beginning of this show, that reading many books could be a sign of trauma, leading you to dissociate because you want to get out of the world that you're in, that could be true. Or it could be a kid who just digs reading and found the Harry Potter series. I mean, seriously, it does not, just looking at, it's not pathognomonic, which means it is not a single symptom that can tell you about everything. Number two, the other thing I said was when you start reading a book and then end it and then don't finish it, that could be a sign of ADHD, or is a sign, whatever I said. It is not. It could happen if you have ADHD, but it does not mean you're going to have ADHD. And if you don't read at all, I said a sign of intellectual disability. It could be. Some kids don't read much because they do have dyslexia. Some kids don't, and she did read, and she had apparently could, she just had trouble with spelling. But there are different things she did to help cope with it, but one of them was to read. So you can't just look at a single sign and say that somebody has something. And this is the problem with social media. I run into this all the time with social media. People come in self-diagnosed. And this has been going on for years, since the internet really became popular. And let me just talk about something which I call grad student syndrome. In psychology, what?
No, I hate that. I already know what you're going to say.
What am I going to say?
It's the people that just got out of school and think they know everything, and now they're going to.
Those people are bad too.
They're going to give all the advice that they can because they feel like I've learned all of this and I have to share it.
No.
So what's the grad student?
So I took early aim at that one on myself, by the way. Because I didn't want to be that person. I said to myself, I love to talk about psychology and love to talk about concepts, etc., but I try to never point at someone and say, you have, or this is what's going on with you. I in fact, will pull back from them. There is nothing. I have a friend who's a physician, he's a psychiatrist, and he will, every chance he gets, he will poke his finger in to say what you're dealing with, or to say what someone else is dealing with, or to tell you about somebody else's diagnosis. And I've mentioned it, I've reacted to it, and now I ignore it. Like I won't, because he's someone who thrives on, getting attention.
That's what I was going to say. I was like, what is the motive behind that person? It's the attention.
So, yeah, he wants to get attention and wants to be seen as someone who's smart. So every time he does that, I ignore it. Change the topic.
Yes. Okay,
so that's the only way to handle it. But anyway, psychology grad student syndrome. When you're in psychology, you have to take a class. The first class you take in my master's program, one of the first classes was a diagnostic class where we had to learn about all the mental illnesses, and we had to go through and learn about all the symptoms. What you do is you start to think that you have everything in the book. Everything. You start to think that you qualify for all the diagnoses, because all the diagnoses include all the human simple behaviors and symptoms that we all deal with. It's just that they have to occur at a specific level intensity and frequency for you to actually diagnose it, and it's got to have an impact on your life. Like it's got to impact school, work, relationships, otherwise being able to care for yourself. Those are things that would help you know that they have a specific mental illness. But nonetheless, you can convince yourself of anything. They have a similar dynamic that happens in medical school, where medical students, when they're first learning about diseases, think they have all of them as they go through. It's a very normal thing to go through, and then you get through it. But this version of this is happening on the internet. I used to call this cyberchondria. Cyberchondria was people who make themselves sick because they read about an illness on the internet. So they read about it and they say, oh, I have that. I have those symptoms. I must have that disorder. Look at me, chronic fatigue, whatever. Like they are saying, that's me. It's supposed to going to a doctor and saying, look, I'm concerned I might have this. Can you take a look and do some tests? That's a fair thing to do. Like, I worry that I might have this, and the doctor will be attentive and look for it. They won't, hopefully push you away. But they'll look. I have seen a history of things. There was, for years, it was bipolar disorder. Everyone came in thinking, I have bipolar disorder. But bipolar disorder is not common. So there are different versions of it, but bipolar disorder 1 is not as common. I mean, it's more common than some other things, but it's, we're talking, I think it's only a couple percent, 1 to 2%. I have to look. Bipolar 1 means you've had a manic episode in your life. It is a severe disorder, but can be really controlled well with medication. And almost everyone I know with bipolar disorder has a very functional life. I mean, they operate extremely well. If they get treatment, they operate extremely well. I think it's one of the best treated disorders.
And do you think autism is like the new hot trend now?
Well, we went through ADHD. That was it for a long time. Everyone had ADHD. By the way, ADHD, can I just tell you about that? ADHD, I had a specific test where I would have them take all these electronic tests that would actually test their timing, their attention, everything. And at the end, it would give me their ADHD, like the likelihood of ADHD, in addition to the symptom checklists. You can go through the symptom checklist and give yourself ADHD because you're not understanding the severity. But I would give them these actual tests, and I would, person after person after person, continue with these people who saw it on TikTok. It was always the same script. I saw it on TikTok. I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure I have ADHD. Like, well, let's test for that. That's what I say. And then I test and I'm like, well, the test does not show that you have ADHD. And they would come back and go, oh my God, I can't believe it. I thought I did. I'm like, we all have attention deficit living in this world with social media and blah, blah, blah. That concern is normal and we got to work on your attention, but ADHD is a specific thing. But
autism, because I feel like everybody
autism is now autism is the new baby,
and people are using it as like any shield that anything they mess up or anything they can't do, they're like, oh, it's my autism. And it's like, you can't just blame everything on it, and most of these people I feel like have not been diagnosed professionally.
If you've seen, there used to be something, and I'm sorry it went away. They took away Asperger's disorder, which was low-grade autistic syndrome. The Asperger's disorder was sort of like people who had social deficits, people who had difficulties, that they didn't get all the social cues, but they were pretty functional people. In fact, usually pretty high-performing people often. Autism is kind of a very much more narrower and more specific thing. Now they say autism spectrum disorder. And I think in a way that does a disservice. That's just my opinion, because it makes everybody's autism seem exactly the same. And that isn't the case. Some people really have a great deal of severity and they suffer a great deal. And some people may have this and that symptom. I've got problems. I've got problems. I don't know if I have any autistic problems, but I certainly have problems. And I certainly miss things sometimes, and other people don't, Brian?
Yeah, I feel like we all do. We're all human, but like you can't be like, oh, it's my autism, you know?
No, I would never do that. And I would never advise anyone else to do it. Are you autistic, Noah?
I am not. No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay, well, you got to watch TikTok.
Oh, maybe I'll find out. I'll get back to you next week.
The other thing you can do on TikTok is diagnose all your friends. Now, you can start with autism. That's a good one to do.
Or your relationship.
Yeah,
that's a great one.
But the most popular diagnosis for your relationship is what?
Oh, they're a narcissist.
Narcissist.
Yeah.
That's right. You got to give them narcissism. Yeah. Also, sociopathy. That's another one. If they wrong you in some way, they must be a sociopath.
And their attachment styles, don't forget.
Oh, attachment. Oh, how did I forget attachment styles? Oh, my God. I have to deal with that all the time. And I just listen because I try to guide people in a particular way. Attachment styles are a little bit like horoscopes. I mean, I hate to say it. You can't. They're big, broad categories, number one, and there's a lot of Barnum statements in there. Barnum statements are statements that apply to everybody. And, if I've actually taken the attachment, like the real, like gold standard attachment test, and you'll never guess what attachment style I have.
Tell us.
What do you think, Brian?
I don't know. What would be some options?
Well, there's anxious attachment style, anxious, avoidant, insecure, whatever. I don't know. All these things.
I don't know.
I'm looking up a list right now. So there's anxious / preoccupied. There is avoidant or dismissive. Uh-huh. There is disorganized / fearful avoidant. Oh, I like that one.
Thank you.
Secure attachment. No.
You don't think I have secure attachment?
That would be boring. Those are the only 4 that I'm seeing on this
That's
website.
the one That's the one I came out with, and that blew my mind because I'm
what does that mean exactly? The secure attachment?
I don't know. That's why it just means I'm pretty good most of the time when it comes to relationships, and I think that is probably the case. I think it really is. I don't worry too much about people leaving, and I don't worry too much about being alone. I like it, and I like being with other people. I really enjoy other people. And
you don't care too much.
What do you mean? Is that it? I think I just don't care.
This is from theattachmentproject.com.
Yes.
It says the secure attachment style implies that a person is comfortable expressing emotions openly.
Yeah, that's true.
Therefore, adults with a secure attachment style can depend on their partners and, in turn, let their partners rely on them.
And
that's true.
Emotional?
Yeah.
Okay.
You've seen that.
Mm-hmm.
What? Don't. Don't.
It takes a minute, but yes.
Well, I grew up with my mother. Let's face it. My mother is. I come from Montana stock. They're not the most expressive people. That's my mother's side. But my dad's side was, more West Coasty, and they were like all kinds of partying. So I don't know.
Yeah, even on Instagram, I've seen ads that come up with like therapy apps or anything that they start saying like, "Oh, are you going through this after a breakup and all this stuff?" And then it's like, "This is probably the attachment style you are." And I'm like, "Oh, I didn't know I had an issue, but okay."
Yeah, I really caution people to stay away from that. You know where it's good for? It's good for kind of like, oh, that's interesting. And if you take a gold standard test for attachment style and you learn about your attachment style, that I don't know what good that does, but it can help, define yourself a little bit. I thought mine was fun. I don't usually brag about stuff, but I thought a secure attachment style was absolutely not what I expected. Honestly. But that's what I came out with because of my answers, and it was solid. It wasn't like barely.
We should probably all do one.
Yeah, you can all do one. But I think people go around diagnosing other people with other people's attachment style, and I'm like, look at the behavior and just talk about the behavior. That's where the money is. If they're avoidant, they're avoidant. If they're anxious, they're anxious. If they're depressed, they're depressed. If they're all over the place, they're all over the place. Talk about the behavior, not the diagnosis. I know it's seductive because with a diagnosis, we can throw it around and we feel empowered and we feel like we have something on somebody. We can say that person's a narcissist and hate them. But, maybe they're just kind of insecure, so they have to cover up by being kind of fluff up their chest a little bit. And maybe that's what's really going on.
It feels like it.
So Grimes, to take it back to Our Lady, urges skepticism of unsupervised medical advice online. Unsupervised. Basically, and I'm going to go through this. There's a doctor online that I really did like. This was out of, by the way, I did want to talk about another study. I'm just going to say there was a study done that found on TikTok that 81% of cancer cures touted on TikTok are fake. 81%. That is trippy. They went through all kinds of things, people selling unsafe products, fake videos using conspiracy theories, claims that governments are trying to hide the miracle cures. And this actually this platform has encouraged radicalization via algorithm. But 81% of cancer cures on TikTok are fake. And it reminded me, there's a woman in Australia, I'm sorry I don't know her name right off, because it just reminded me, apparently they did a movie about her on Netflix, and she also, I saw a 60 Minutes Australia thing about her, and she was something we call it Munchausen disorder, casually, but it's called factitious disorder. And factitious disorder is when people give themselves an illness in order to get attention. And generally what they do is they develop factitious disorder to go into doctors and fool doctors into thinking they have the disorder, to either give them treatment or to prescribe medication or just feel bad for them or to have their families feel bad for them. And factitious disorder is a very particular odd disorder that doesn't show up for therapy. No one pops into a therapist and says, I have factitious disorder or Munchausen's, but basically they're people who are considered rather naive and are trying to seek attention a particular way. This woman in Australia, she took factitious disorder to another level because she didn't just do it to a doctor. She went online and presented herself as having cancer, and then walked herself through all these natural cures that cured her cancer, and then wrote an entire cookbook series and she had millions of followers, the whole thing, and this is blown up out of complete, yeah.
That's crazy. That's absolute insanity. How do you
because she wanted the attention, and this is the problem with social media. It's an attention economy and people want attention. What will get attention? I have the secret. I have the answer. Me.
Well, you've mentioned that lies travel faster than the truth.
Oh, way faster.
That I'm I've thought about this. What if I just go on TikTok and just spread lies? It would probably go viral and I'd probably become something huge, it's happening.
You probably would.
Dang.
You probably would.
That's insane.
Yeah, you probably would. So let's go through there's... Yeah.
And that's just all for attention? That disease?
Well, for her. Yeah, in factitious disorder?
Yes.
Yeah, it's attention, but a particular kind of attention. They want people to feel sorry for them. They want people to care about them and to worry about them. It's not just, hey, look who it is. It's oh, you poor thing.
So it's almost like them being lonely and not loved?
Well, they're usually very naive, and they usually have trouble forming deeper relationships. And it could also take place, there's factitious by proxy, which is also called Munchausen's by proxy, which you have a child that you make sick, and sometimes the child doesn't even know it's being made sick by its parent, where the parent is giving it some kind of poison or doing something to the child to make the child sick so people will feel sorry for the mother. or or father, whoever's doing it, they'll feel sorry for the parent that, to take care of them. And this is a particular form of attention seeking as well. Yeah, you didn't know that.
No.
So let's go through what you can do on social media to protect yourself. I did promise that, didn't I?
Yeah.
Okay. What to do? Are you inspired or frightened by health information on social media? I would say you should go in with caution. Caution.
Question everything.
Question everything. The influence is real. 52% of people learn about health from social media, and only 34% learn about health from doctors. So it really is much bigger. 67% of Gen Z, isn't that you, Brian? And you, Noah, what are you, Gen Z?
Yeah, I'm Gen Z.
All right, you guys can party. 67% of you actually go out and try health trends you've seen on social media. That's 2/3 of you. That's a lot of you. Only 19% of baby boomers do that. That's only 1/5 of them. So they tend to not follow the trends as much. Boomers aren't as trendy. When they were kids, they were trendy, but now they got their dwindling Social Security to worry about. So
Are you a boomer?
I think
you don't have to respond.
I think Gen X is but I'm on the cusp. I'm a cusp baby.
Okay.
So you can tell. I am much more of the Gen X generation, but which is the forgotten generation. So much so that there was a special on ABC and they forgot to list it. No, seriously, that's what they were always called, as the forgotten generation. And you had a whole special on generations, and they didn't even do Gen X. They didn't even say it. I just thought that was the funniest thing I ever saw. Anyway. Never learned about myself. All bad. It's not all bad. We got to do caution. So here are some steps that these experts have recommended. Number 1, pause. When you come across health information, pause. This is hard to do on social media, isn't it? Pause. Step 1, take a breath before reacting or sharing. Remember that algorithms often prioritize emotions over facts. Emotions are what get clicks, and that's what they're going to prioritize to you. If it's extreme, if it's all good or all bad, it's going to get clicks. So realize that information is going to get more of a hit than just good information. So, number 1, pause. Number 2, check the source. Is the person trained in the field? Like for me, I'm a psychologist. I'm trained. I have actually a license. I'm licensed in 2 states. There is some, you can look me up. You can look me up and you know that I am actually
a real professional.
A real professional. So that means I would say you can trust me as far as psychological advice, but only so far. You want to make sure that I'm not benefiting from my advice financially. And I don't, do I?
Nope.
No.
Unless we are your actual patients, but no.
No. Yeah. Oh, well, then that's not anything I do here.
No, yeah, no.
So actual patients I see in a separate room, separate place. I do therapy. It's a product that I offer, and it's a very, very different thing than what we talk about here. So I don't even promote my therapy practice. I don't.
Oh, yeah, you don't
want to.
at all.
No, not at all.
Which is good, yeah.
Yeah, no. I don't benefit in any way financially. So if anyone's benefiting financially, including if they're selling some weird little product like, oh, I have this, whatever. Influencers promoting products are going to be people you should really question the source when it comes to health stuff. Number 3, know the risks. Licensed professionals are held accountable. If I say and do something that is harmful, then I can be held accountable for that. A random influencer is not held accountable or liable for misinformation. They're just some dude out there screaming from a soapbox that you chose to trust. That's not your fault. I mean, it's not their fault. So they're not going to be held accountable for the misinformation. So unless that person has a license to practice health in some way, I would be very distrusting. And I would want them, I wouldn't come to me for cardiac advice. I wouldn't. I may know some stuff, but but I'm not a cardiologist. I'm not trained in that. I'm not trained in that at all. So I would be a bad person to come see. What?
Oh,
yes,
yeah,
that's true.
That's true.
Step 4, leave room for doubt. Avoid those who speak with certainty but lack credentials. I like that piece of advice because it said, but lack credentials. So it's okay for people who have credentials. Actually, I don't know. I sometimes speak with certainty, when I'm kind of pissed, which I kind of was today. Was a little bit edgy today, I suppose. But in general, professionals try to have some nuance in what they're talking about. We try to say, could be this, could be that. There's this, and you try to leave some room, because you cannot just say absolutely yes or no until you have confirmation from some other way. Like the people with ADHD, they would come in, I'd be like, well, in my own head, I'm thinking, I'm not so sure, but I haven't seen evidence of it, but let's do a test. And then I have the test, and then I have evidence that I can point to. And the person's like, well, what's going on? That I saw all these TikTok videos, and now does that prove that I, am wrong? And it's like, you may still have attention deficits, and they may be due to other things, but you don't have attention deficit disorder. So you want to worry about those who speak with certainty, and those are the big ones, man. Those are the big, like, bodybuilders, anybody with life coach. I mean, they're really big about just like dispensing the information. Everything's correct. Look for consensus and nuance, not absolute. So look for consensus. Look for all the health people agreeing. Look for scientific agreement. Now we have right now all these scientists and all these studies and all these institutes around the United States being defunded by the government. It is going to cause a trauma to science. It's going to last for years. And we may, and I hate to say this, we have premier scientists here, but there may come a time, maybe in the not so distant future, that we may have to start looking to other countries to dispense accurate scientific information. And that worries me.
Well, I don't think scientific
we're there now,
but like just information in general.
I don't think we're there now
yet.
But I worry that the trauma being done is going to have a long-term effect in our lifetimes. And number 5, this is the one I really advise. You go to your doctor and you ask. Screenshot, discuss any online claims. Like, bring in that TikTok video that you're so convinced told you that you have ADHD or autism or whatever. Go in and say, this is it. And talk it over with your doctor. They will look at it. Any kind of online research should prepare you as a patient, not replace the doctor's words. So it's there to just give you an idea, and then you can go, this is what medication or pharma does when they advertise drugs on TV. They know if they advertise a drug that you're going to go into your doctor and ask about it. So your doctor's going to know this is happening. It's almost like promotion for illness, but nonetheless, the doctor's going to be able to say yes or no. And I think that's the better thing. With doctors too, they actually in this article said that doctors, physicians, psychologists, mental health people should engage online to fight misinformation. I hope I'm doing that with this, what we're talking about now. No?
Yeah. No, yeah, but I'm like, I don't know if doctors and everybody has the time.
Nobody has the time. Nobody has the time.
Uneducated people that are just saying random shit.
This show absolutely drains me. I mean, it's my only free time I devote to this. Yeah. So, yeah, nobody has the time. If you have the time, you're not working. Or maybe you have, I don't know.
Maybe that is our job.
Maybe they're just doing social media as a job. Yeah, maybe that's it. And support credible sources by interacting with their content. So go to like the American Heart Association, go to the American Psychological Association. Get information from credible places. Don't just trust Brad on the internet who, discovered that he could give advice and somebody said that really helped me, and then now he's a coach. I don't know.
After reading a self-help book, you know.
So though social media may reflect our interests, we have to think critically. Trust comes from credentials and not clicks. Actually, that article was from the American Heart Association. Yeah. So if you think you are, actually, we talked about a lot of heavy things today, and if you got all the way to the end, if you actually find yourself in crisis, you can dial 988. That is a nationwide number, 24/7, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, free and confidential crisis information for mental health support. That's text, or you can also text 988 or visit 988lifeline.org to chat with a counselor. And thank you, Noah. And that wraps up our show for today. A reminder to like, subscribe, to give us 5 stars. Links to the studies go to youtube.com/Dr. Greg. Also, if you have any questions or topic, hit us up on socials at Ask Dr. Greg. Brian will intercept your question. This is Dr. Greg, Brian, and Noah, who so nicely took that quiz today. Thank you for that. This is Dr. Greg, Brian, and Noah bidding you farewell. Until next time, be present, be flexible, and be kind.